very much indeed, Madam Deputy Speaker. Will the Minister make a statement to the House about the ongoing negotiations on the World Health Organization Pandemic Agreement and the amendments to the international health regulations ahead of any votes at the World Health Assembly, which starts next week?
Well, thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and can I congratulate my honourable friend, the Member for Devizes, for securing this urgent question, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to update the House. I want to start by making three promises. First, the Government will only accept the accord and targeted amendments to the international health regulations if they are firmly in the United Kingdom's national interest, and no text has yet been agreed. We will only accept the accord and amendments by the World Health Assembly and adopt them if they are firmly in the UK's national interest to do so. Secondly, this Government will only sign up to measures that respect our national sovereignty. And third, under no circumstances will we allow the WHO to have the power to mandate lockdowns. This would be unthinkable and has never been proposed. Protecting our sovereignty is a British red line. Madam Deputy Speaker, let me now dispel three myths about the negotiations. First, the myth that the negotiations are being led by the WHO. They are not being led by the WHO, they are entirely led by Member States. Second, the idea that we would give away a fifth of our vaccines in the next pandemic. This is simply not true. And of course, Madam Deputy Speaker, we are a generous country. Companies may make their own choices to donate vaccines, but this would be, and should be, entirely their decision. Countries are discussing a voluntary mechanism for UK businesses to sign up to if they wish to share vaccines in return for information they may need to develop their products. And a third point is about transparency. This is a point I take extremely seriously, as one who campaigned so hard for this Parliament's sovereignty. Whilst it is not common practice for the Government to give an update on live negotiations, I met with some interested parliamentarians last week to discuss their concerns with these negotiations. I also had the pleasure of leading a Westminster Hall debate on these negotiations in December, attended by my honourable friend and many others, and I will continue to meet with him and other concerned parliamentarians as we act in the national interest. Madam Deputy Speaker, effective agreements can help us to deliver smarter surveillance, swifter pathogen and data sharing, faster development of pandemic vaccines, tests and treatments, which would save lives and protect people both in the UK and around the world.
Danny Kruger.
Deputy Speaker, can I say how much I appreciate the commitments that the Minister has just made, and I want to acknowledge the good work that he has been doing in government and indeed his predecessors ahead of the World Health Assembly that meets next week, and I'm very pleased to hear the commitments that he's just made. My concern, Madam Deputy Speaker, is not with the Government's position, but with the WHO itself, and I appreciate his point that it's Member States leading these proposals. That's worrying in itself. But we know from the drafts that have been submitted in recent months what the real agenda of the WHO is. They want to have binding powers over national governments to introduce all sorts of restrictive measures on our citizens. They want to be able to direct the health budgets of Member States. They want to introduce global digital health passports and other measures. And this is the organisation that aspires, in the words that are still in the draft treaty that we have, to be, and I quote, the directing and coordinating authority on international health work, including pandemic prevention and response. And I appreciate no text has yet been agreed, which is why it's important that we have this debate. But the proposals in the latest draft that was published last month are concerning enough, and they require national governments to agree to a whole series of commitments which will be binding under international law if the UK signs up to them. Surveillance of the health of the population, commitments on funding, both in the UK and abroad, the emergency authorisation of new vaccines, speeded up authorisation processes, to give some vaccines to the WHO to distribute, potentially the authorisation of national governments to introduce compulsory vaccination of travellers, and a very wide discretion given to the Director General of the WHO to act on his own initiative. Madam Deputy Speaker, the Government still has the opportunity to oppose the treaty and the regulations as they're currently drafted. We appreciate we wait to see the final text in the coming days. But can I ask the Minister to clarify very explicitly from the dispatch box what the Government's red lines are? And I heard what he said. Could he go a little further in the detail on what he means? Secondly, will the Government oppose any text that binds this or a future Government in in how it responds to health threats? And finally, crucially, will the government comply with CRAG, the requirement to put the treaties to a ratification vote in Parliament?
Well, thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And can I thank my honourable friend for the constructive way that he and other parliamentarians have engaged with this subject matter and the challenges it presents. As I said in my opening remarks, no text has yet been agreed. I set out some of our negotiating red lines. I'm happy to confirm from the dispatch box that the current text is not acceptable to us, and therefore, unless the current text is changed and refined, we will not be signing up. My honourable friend asks about how the treaty will be ratified if we reached a position which the UK government could agree to. The UK treaty making process means the accord is, of course, negotiated and agreed by the government. Parliament, as he will know, plays an important part in scrutinising treaties under the CRAG process and determining how international obligations should be reflected domestically. But it's important to remember that because the exact form of the accord has not yet been agreed, the parliamentary and the adoption process will depend on which article of the WHO Constitution the accord is adopted under.